The measure of merriment. In the heart of a jungle so vibrant and teeming with life that the very air seemed to hum with energy, a strange object appeared one morning. Nestled amongst the roots of an ancient banyan tree where the dappled sunlight danced, sat a set of bathroom scales. It was made of cool, smooth enamel and had a large, clear dial, but no one knew what it was for. The younger monkeys poked it with sticks, and a grumpy old warthog tried to sharpen his tusks on it, all to no avail. The mystery remained until Percy, a parrot with plumage like a jeweller's window, fluttered down from the canopy. Percy had once lived in a place called a zoo, from which he had engineered a brilliant escape, and he carried with him scraps of knowledge from the human world. "It's for weighing," he squawked, puffing out his chest. "You stand on it, and it tells you how much of you there is. Humans are absolutely obsessed with it." This revelation caused a great stir. Weighing? What a marvellous concept! Led by a particularly enthusiastic zebra, the animals formed an orderly queue. At first it was a splendid game. They would hop on, note the number the needle pointed to, and then compare it with the day before. "I'm up a smidgen," Barnaby the bear would roar with delight, seeing it as a sign of his growing strength. "I'm a fraction less," Giselle the giraffe would announce, pleased with her own lightness of foot. However, the novelty soon began to curdle. The numbers, which had started as a bit of fun, became terribly important. Barnaby the bear, who had always enjoyed a breakfast of honeycomb and berries, started to worry that his number was climbing too high. He began to eye his food with suspicion, his great happy belly no longer a source of pride, but anxiety. Giselle the giraffe, famed for her elegant willowy dance by the waterhole, became convinced her number made her seem clumsy. She stopped dancing and spent her time stretching her neck, hoping to appear thinner. Milo the monkey, the swiftest acrobat in the high branches, fretted that an extra ounce would slow his spectacular leaps. The jungle grew quiet. The cheerful morning chatter was replaced by a tense, silent procession to the scales. Each animal would step on, watch the needle with dread, and then trudge away with a gloomy face. For no matter what the dial said, the feeling was always the same. It was more than they wanted. The joy was draining out of the jungle, replaced by a grey cloud of comparison and discontent. The poor scales bore the brunt of this unhappiness. They were no longer a novelty, but a tyrant. They were kicked by zebras, scowled at by monkeys, and glared at with such intensity by Barnaby the bear that the enamel began to feel quite hot. The scales, which had only ever done what they were made to do, felt the immense weight of all this sorrow. One evening, as the last dejected animal shuffled away, the scales came to a decision. Things had to change. The next morning, the zebra was the first to arrive, its hooves clopping nervously. It stepped onto the platform, bracing for the familiar lurch of the needle and the subsequent wave of disappointment. But instead of moving, the needle stayed perfectly still. In its place, a peculiar sensation started at the soles of the zebra's hooves. It was a faint, fizzing, wriggling feeling. The scales had begun to tickle it. The zebra snorted in surprise. The tickling grew more insistent, finding that especially sensitive spot just behind the fetlock. A giggle escaped the zebra's lips, then another. Soon it was consumed by helpless, rolling laughter, its black and white stripes wobbling with mirth. It was so much fun that the zebra completely forgot why it had come to the scales in the first place. It galloped off towards the plains, still chortling, to enjoy its breakfast with more gusto than it had in months. One by one, The other animals approached with caution. Joseph the giraffe stepped on delicately. A gentle tickle danced across her hooves, making her perform an impromptu, high-kicking dance that was more graceful than any she had done before. She sashayed away, her head held high, humming a happy tune. When it was Barnaby the bear's turn, he placed a heavy paw on the platform. A deep, rumbling tickle started up, making his great belly jiggle like a bowl full of jelly. A huge, booming laugh erupted from him, shaking the very leaves on the trees. He felt so light and full of joy that he immediately went to find the biggest honeycomb he could. Before long, a new queue formed at the scales every morning, but this one was full of excitement and anticipation. The animals no longer came to be measured, but to be tickled. The jungle was filled with the sound of giggling, chuckling, and roaring laughter. As the seasons turned to years, a further magic began to work on the old scales. They had absorbed so much happiness that they changed their function entirely. They stopped tickling and instead began to measure the good humour and optimism of whoever stood upon them. When an animal stepped on, the dial would glow with a warm golden light. A kind deed would make it shine brightly. A shared laugh would make it pulse with brilliance. The animals soon realized that this was a far better indicator of their worth than any old number. They learned that the true measure of a friend was the brightness of their glow, a sign of the happiness they carried and shared. And so in the jungle, where the air once again hummed with energy and delight, everyone completely forgot about that antiquated and old-fashioned measurement known as the kilo. They had found a much better way to value themselves and each other. They had discovered the measure of merriment.